Greetings, my name is Michael Levine and welcome to another edition of Without Notes, which by the title I assume you can understand is a conversation without notes, with no agenda. My partner for the expedition today is a very fascinating man, and a very fascinating man multidimensionally. He's a legal legend, but beyond that, he's a man who is now dedicating his life to a new adventure. At a point in life in which many people would be reading copious cruise brochures, he has taken a road less traveled, and we're going to talk about it today. It's a real honor and a privilege to have on Without Notes, Robert Shapiro.
Thank you for those kind words, Michael, and always great to see you. You look fabulous.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. So, let's start sequentially, biographically. There are many people watching this throughout the world who are fascinated by your career, and I want to do a tiny bit of setup for them, how you became who you are. So, let's start there if we can. Where were you born?
I was born in Plainfield, New Jersey.
Plainfield, New Jersey. And I spent a little time in New Jersey. I was born in New York. And
I spent a little time there too. I left when I was 11 months old.
You did? That is a very little time. All right. So then at 11 months, where do you go?
We came to Los Angeles, California. My grandfather came out here first with my grandmother.
Right.
He had a son and two daughters, my father and two sisters. They all came out here, and then the last to come was my father, my mother, and myself to come to the West Coast to start a new life.
Tremendous opportunity time here in the West Coast.
Correct.
Right. So you arrive here and you go to school in Los Angeles?
So first we lived in West Adams with my grandfather.
Now explain to the audience what West Adams is today versus what it was then.
West Adams then was kind of a melting pot for immigrants and kind of a primarily Jewish neighborhood. Today it's primarily African American.
Right.
And when I was ready to go to grammar school, my grandfather found a 4-unit apartment that was a block and a half away from the grammar school, and decided to buy that in 1942. And he moved.
Early part of the war years.
Yeah. And so he moved into 1 unit. My father, mother, and myself moved into the upstairs unit. My aunt to the downstairs unit, and my other aunt to the upstairs unit. And so it was a family compound. The apartment was south of Pico and east of La Cienega, which is primarily apartment houses, with a grammar school that was literally a block and a half away. The times were significantly different. La Cienega is a major thoroughfare today.
Yes. Right.
Then they had a working dairy farm called Ador Farms with the cows.
You bought an apartment building. That would indicate that maybe you were from a somewhat prosperous home?
No, actually, my grandfather was in the scrap metal business, and I think he had put away some money.
Right.
I'm sure the apartment building cost less than $20,000,
Right.
with probably a $2,000 down payment. And we still have that apartment building today.
You do?
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
And we actually have it as a sober living house.
Oh, well, that we're going to get to later on. Okay, so you go to elementary school, high school where?
Hamilton High School, public high school.
Yeah.
Again, the majority of the people there were Jewish. School virtually closed for Jewish holidays. Very, very few African Americans.
Right.
And now primarily African American.
And were you raised in what would be perceived as a religious home?
semi-religious. My grandfather, on the other side, my mother's father, was a cantor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to through Orthodox training as a kid for a bar mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was fluent in Hebrew. My father was probably agnostic, although we never really discussed it.
Right. That's interesting because, as you know, Judaism is not only a religion, there's a cultural aspect to it. You could have a commitment to bagels and...
I think it's more, today, especially with the younger people, it's much more cultural than religious.
That's true. So, you then, are you a good student in high school?
I was okay, kind of like a goof off. First, I was very, very small. I was among the smallest people graduating junior high school. Louis Pasteur, 600 kids graduating. I'm in the first row with the girls. So I was about 5 feet tall when I entered high school. I did okay, enough to get into UCLA as a freshman.
After high school, on any given day, if you were practicing a sport, your parents didn't take off of work at 3:30 in the afternoon to come and watch you.
That's absolutely correct.
And therefore, did you learn to be more self-sufficient than so many of the, I guess, what's a nice word for coddled kids of today?
Spoiled.
Yes, yes. So now you go to UCLA, and in early college years, do you have a sense of what you want to do?
This is a great question. So my mother was, even though she didn't go to college, was extremely smart and very well read. She said something to me that stuck with me and I thought was a great idea. She said, being a doctor is really a hard job. But being a dentist is really something that people will always need. They'll always need a dentist. And the second thing she told me is, and the language you should study is Spanish, because that will be the language of the future in California.
Wow.
Okay?
Unthinkable then.
This is in 1960. So now I'm here with all these geniuses in chemistry and physics, classes I took in high school and did okay on, but not to the level that these people did.
Right.
So now my first grade from UCLA is in Spanish 1. And in those days they graded on something called the bell curve.
Yeah, I think I kind of know what it is.
Okay, so
The
right up here
average-
is a C,
Yeah.
right up here is an A, and right up here is an F. So for every A there's an F,
Right.
and the majority of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
get C's. There's 32 people in the class. 31 of them, their native language is Spanish. Where do you think I came out on the bell curve?
I have
Take a
this
wild guess.
instinct. I just have an instinct. I could be wrong. Maybe on the lower end. I'm just saying.
My first grade at UCLA, F, in Spanish 1. Now, I'm all over the place in chemistry and physics. I'm not going on with dentistry.
You're a shitty potential dentist.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Said, you know what? This semester is going to be a waste. I have to take a little break.
Yeah.
So I have to switch majors. And I really don't know what to switch to. So I decided to become a business major. And found that there were things that I was actually pretty good at, especially economics. It's now 1965. The Vietnam War is raging. The draft board is right across the street. And I am 1A, fit and ready to go to Vietnam. So just to go back for a moment, at UCLA, since it was a federally funded school, you had to be in the ROTC. You had to be in the ROTC for 2 years.
What is, just tell the audience.
The Reserve Officers
yeah.
Training Corps.
Right.
So full uniform, guns, M1 guns,
Right.
and go out on the what is now the athletic field and march and
Yeah.
do these drills. And then if you decide to stay 2 more years, you go in as a second lieutenant. That was my plan. I had an accident. I was the guidon. So the guidon is the person who carries the flag for the review when you march around the track with all the people from Washington out there. And so you have to pick up the flag and you set the cadence, and at the end to stop, you take the flag, you pull around, put it under your arm, and the troop stops. I have an accident and the flag hits the ground. And I am now thrown out of the Army.
So now you're
I'm virtually court-martialed.
a man who was an aspiring but shitty dentist, then gets thrown out of the Army.
Now I'm out of the Army.
With a first grade in UCLA as an F.
Exactly.
This is a very stellar career at this point.
I'm destined for greatness.